So I was just basically saying that we can begin our conversation and continue from where we left yesterday. So we have gone back and forth, which means yesterday we have touched, your experience with Gilbert Churai, Reed, and so on and so forth. So probably we can keep on touching some of these issues that were contemporary that you experienced over a period of time. But at the same time, we can begin from where we left yesterday around the 1950s. And then we can see how we proceed from there. So I pass it on to you now to carry this conversation forward.
So today, in continuation of where we left off yesterday, today being the 23rd of October 2020, and we're trying to discuss probably almost 100 years of history of the transitions, the various transitions that has taken place. So we've touched upon, the British coming in, and then their run over here, and then we touched upon the dominion of India, the transition period, the Constituent Assembly, the Khasi states being unrepresented, indirectly being represented by others. So practically we touch on those issues, and then ultimately suddenly 1950, everything was just like a switch, like a remote or a TV was just turned off, like Khasi states, as if Khasi states never existed. So this is one was quite a challenge from 1950 onwards. Their office got seized, they're locked. Probably the files, documents, everything were taken over. The bank account of around a balance of 3 lakhs something was also taken. It's a strange, it was, I was just imagining how could they do all this? But I guess, again, society was our people were in 2 parts, divided. So one was full with, enthusiasm that, and I forgot to mention yesterday that we also had a sitting of the Khasi States Constitution making Darbar. It was like an assembly of parliament of the Khasi States. They sat in session. They made recommendations. They made proposals. They voted. They also voted for which kind of future structure would they like to live in India. And in that voting, the Khasi States versus Reverend Nichols Roy's proposal, the Khasi States won. And I recall some of the elders mentioning that they walked out. The group of Reverend Nichols Roy walked out and said, although we've lost here, we will win in Delhi. Which, proved their point, because when the Constitution of India was passed finally, the only mention we had was from former Premier of Assam, Syed Mahmud Sadullah, Syed Mahmud Sadullah. It is really an irony that someone of a different community would then, make such a talk. So he reminded that there are 25 native states who had an agreement with the Khasi states, and they have certain agreements, and these agreements have not been concluded, settled, or have not found place in the Constitution of India. And he gave a word of caution to say that, although, because he was mentioning this at the 3rd reading. So you had the 1st reading where you could make amendments. You had a 2nd reading where you still could make amendments. And at the 3rd reading, it was just a reading of the final draft, no corrections, nothing. So it was then that he made this remark, very, very interesting remark, from no less than the Premier of Assam, to point out that this is a flaw that has happened. And he said that, although most of us may not be here again, because he was talking about, the next Constituent Assembly or the next Parliament after 50. He said, I urge upon the other members to right the wrong, So we look at this, his statement is a very, very significant statement in the sense that none other than a former premier, who's after 50, they were known as chief ministers, had raised this point, which is still today pending and has not been resolved. So with effect from 26 Jan 1950, we come to this, right? We're today debating on this. This is the holy book of the governance structure of the country, the Constitution of India. And it is in this book that, what Mr. Sadullah, late former Premier of Assam, mentioned, you can still find it, the anomaly in the first schedule of the Constitution of India, wherein in the alphabetical order, the state of Assam, is mentioned. And it mentions Khasi state as being part of the erstwhile state of Assam. That itself would require, why were these words, Khasi states, still mentioned, were mentioned in the first schedule of the Constitution of India? Primarily because we did not merge. So but by constitutional process, we should have been a state from day one. The Khasi states should have been a state from day one. So somehow this has not happened, and we find our what do you call it, the being mentioned here right now on the first schedule. It reads like this. I'll just read it. Assam in the alphabetical order is a state listed in the first schedule as the second, the second. So it says the territories which immediately before the commencement of this constitution, were comprised in the province of Assam, that's one entity, the Khasi states, and the Assam tribal areas. So what I mean to say is that this constitutional anomaly is very, very glaring in the first schedule of the Constitution, to the fact that they couldn't just delete the word Khasi states from whatever discussion that was going on. It's a recognition of the flag raised by Muhammad Sadullah that it has not been concluded. There were certain agreements and they have not been addressed. And this matter is still pending till today. So these are the challenges that has happened since 50. And, people have tried to talk about it subsequently. So it's taken quite a long time for the resurgence of, So in between, I think, again, I would like to emphasize my gratefulness to Gilbert Chulai. And then maybe, because we didn't have social media then also. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all these latest technologies that we have today that, we are being able to discuss this over Zoom, you all the way from another state in the part of India, and we are sitting here. In between the events of Hima Nongstoin, the Khasi states, significant thing that happened at that time, I have to rewind a bit to 1947, 48, was that Hima Nongstoin, based on the Indian Independence Act, refused to accept the instrument of accession and annex agreement and declared by a resolution independence on 13 January 1948. They even wrote to the UN. In fact, 1 or 2 countries responded to them to complain about the forceful annexation of the occupation of the Nongstoin state, which would have been a Nongstoin country. So these are, we didn't have social media, so that impact or that whatever was done. So we are not even aware subsequently of what are the efforts of Wycliffe's aim. That is a gap which academicians or historians or people like us would have to then figure out, because from what I have found is that, okay, so he was there, he made a big protest in he was the spokesperson of that kingdom, Himan-Ostein, and then he left because he was designated to go. He and another gentleman. One gentleman was designated to come to Hindustan. One was designated. Wycliffe Singh was designated to go to Pakistan, East Pakistan, to go and tell them that, okay, we have decided to be friendly with both sides. There was another resolution there in their resolution which said, okay, we would like to maintain our peaceful coexistence with Hindustan and Pakistan. So while Wycliffe went there, in between, in the interim, when he was traveling and to East Pakistan, this occupation took place. Assam Rifle soldiers landed up there with the political officer, and they practically put the same under house arrest, same. And his mantris, elders, he was not allowed to convene his darbar, and so on and so forth. So he remained on the other side because, obviously if he were to return, he would be arrested. And in his wisdom thought, well, he can continue to raise the issues from the other side of the border. So we are not aware of what else or what all transpired in that part. But what we do know now is that in the subsequent, then the 6th schedule came, district council came, they had these elections. And, ironically, one major plank argument of Reverend Nicholas Roy propelling the idea of a 6th schedule was to have one single administration. And that single administration, that idea was very much, I think, a large section of people who were saying, yes, this makes sense, because 25 Khasi states, they have giant hills, and you have another whole lot of 30 Sadarships, which were not part of that treaty. So he said, okay, this administration will get everybody in together. We have not yet deliberated today. I've started proposing some questions to some people that, do you think it is necessary to now to again discuss the reunification of the Khasi people? Because the very objective of Reverend Nicholas Roy was to create one single administration for the Khasi Jaintia people. And that his very, very objective, one can say, has failed, because further down in 64, 65, there was a split. Politics came in. And from what I understand is, again, political party powers at Delhi, Assam, found it convenient. Okay, let's, dip in and put our finger into creation of another district council. So the creation of the Jaintia Hills Autonomous District Council was another setback. I should say, if Reverend Nicholas Roy was alive then, he would have been extremely very unhappy at that thing, because it destroyed his entire argument that you required the 6th schedule, a kind of an administration to get everybody together. It did not work. So we are where we are today, and Gilbert Shulai then came in the picture. I guess, as he mentioned to me, that he was not he didn't have, although he became a CM. If you look at the quality and people who were part of the first few terms of the district council, they were people of elite, of eminence of the Khasi society. You had a gentleman from Jantos, Mr. Edwinson Barre, quite an orator. You had a lot of people there. Jasman Swear, a lot of many people there, including some of the sames. It'll be interesting to know also that in the first constitution of the members, which was by nomination by the governor, prominent among them was the Same of Khairim. That's another very ironic thing. It's there on the website of the Khasi District Council. Can you see the dichotomy, how the governor found that the Same should have been, found it fit for the Same to be one of the members of the first constitution of the District Council. And subsequently, in their internal politics, they then decided that no, they had to bring in the 59 Act and bring him under, some other kind of at a different level. So I'm not too sure whether, this, as Gilbert had said in Khasi, that this is a sixth schedule, naru. It's a trap, where they trap rabbits, they trap all these animals. So he said, when I asked him then in total sum, what is this then? When you're telling me it's just like this, like that, it's become, he said, it's just a trap. To see how else to tame us, to see how else we can, forget this, this unique institution and all that. So this is the unfortunate situation that we are in. And so Bar Gilbert, so I went and sat with him, and like I mentioned yesterday, it was a trying time to convince him to agree to meet me. And he literally just said, so finally, again, grateful to same Dr. Balaji. He said that, I'm grateful to, he made the connections, he made the interventions, and got me to meet him. And in that, finally, when I met him, then he says, I asked him, why were you hesitant on meeting me? He said, nothing personal, but he said, like you, many people have come around and they have gone about, and then, yeah, he said, I have nothing against them, but, they come and tell me they wasted my time. I've put in a lot of effort to explain to them, and then they have gone on to different planks, different platforms, and this whole agenda is forgotten. I wouldn't want to name them, but he said a lot of interesting personalities had come across him to go and find out whatever. So I said, okay, you'll have to take me at my face value that, I really, really want to find out what is this, because I was being pushed to contest the MDC election at that point of time, the district council election. And I thought, really, maybe I could be able to do something about this. And subsequently, on learning what it was, what it is, I left, resigned, had a press conference, resigned from this political position that I was holding then. I was the General Secretary of the East Khasi Hills of the UDP, was formerly in the HPU, which got merged and then became renamed into the UDP, and resigned. So a lot of people, were very, very wondering why I resigned, and I've done a foolish thing. But I feel that as a Khasi people, we are faced with contradictions. We are trying to put our feet on two boats, one leg on the other boat, another leg on the other boat, and not knowing which way. So I decided, okay, I'll resign and go and figure out what the people think. So the methodology that I adopted was, okay, given all this knowledge, given whatever information that I've got from late Gilbert Shulai, and the books and the amount of time that I spent in trying to understand the system, the traditional institutions, how it worked, even to try and figure out, okay, a lot of people saying, no, but I see him, he does not, he's an authority on his own. But when I sat with them, and when I sat with the clan, and I, had an introspection of how the system worked with the real stakeholders, then you find out that you will not find another democracy as effective as what we have, except something as similar as what you have in the natives of North America or Africa, or similar to what the cantons, very similar to what the cantons have in Switzerland. It's a very similar kind of a process. where we are based on consensus and referendum, whereas the present political system is based on first past the post, the majority. You also have a situation where I will legislate if I have a majority, and be damned, you are in the opposition, you cannot do anything. So what happens is that policy is not consistent. So another group comes, another party comes to power, and then he says, okay, I'll undo what the other person has done in his previous term. Why I'm mentioning this, why it is relevant to us, is because if you'll see, many parties have come and said, okay, we are the only party who love the Jagbandrayo, And when you tell them, okay, list me 20 things what you will do. So nowhere does this, except when there's district council elections, then they will say, okay, we want to, we are here to do codification. Even in 68 years, they have not completed codification. And debate is still going on. So these are the conflicts. So you find a system put in place. You have the Khasi states, the same people. I recall in my meeting with G.K. Pillai, the then Joint Secretary of Ministry of Home Affairs, he asked me, are these people who you're referring to one and the same who participate in this council elections? I said, yeah, they're the same. So he said, then how come, you are the only person who's come out to me and brought all these things, whereas nobody is, the normal conventional process of, the chief executive member or the DC council, coming out on this, or the state government coming out of this. I never heard of them coming on this, or even the member of parliaments from your own community. So I get a feeling that maybe these chiefs and who you represent and their people, are they one and the same who also go and vote? So it's quite a challenge to try and, on one hand, we have our people who are saying, okay, what to do? We're stuck because of this, as per the constitutional mechanism.
Lakinder.
I think we lost. Yes. I think we lost John.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that is beginning. Yeah. So we started again.
Okay. So I was saying that my interaction with G.K. Pillai sometime in May 1999, it was our first meeting. And I thought, okay, after having toured, as I mentioned to you, after having decided the methodology of going about it, I thought, after having sat with Gilbert Shulai like a student, trying to connect all the information that he gave me, reading all his numerous booklets, 5-page, 10-page booklets that he published, the very booklet of from British India to Bharat India, Shillong, then Hima Malayam, reading a number of books. I read some of the writings of a number of writings of Reverend Nicholas Roy. I tried to study go into the Constituent Assembly debates. Also, yes, I think I forgot to mention that I saw a lot of negativity on that, the way the Assam leaders were vehemently opposed to any idea of autonomy to the Khasis. Very, very vehemently opposed. Some of the language there was very, very, very strong. So I thought, okay, with all this information, let me first find out, because what is the agreement all about? The way the spin was done during 47, 48, 49, 50 onwards, was that the SAMs had sold out on the people. This was a very, very interesting aspect, that the way the spin went on by those who had were more resourceful in decimating information to the extent that you wouldn't believe that some of the CMs were in a darbar. The people gathered and just said, okay, we will vote out the same. The CM of Maharam was voted out on this fact. It was a very tragic thing. And well, the CM, it's not like you had a dictatorial kind of a situation where, you couldn't do that. So, but that showed the power of our system. And if one was not careful, then people, get emotional and refuse to listen to anything else. So there was a big spin on campaign to say that the CMs had sold out. This instrument of accession was a sellout. And that's where I spent so much time with Bag Gilbert Shulai to figure out whether it was a sellout. Yes, he agreed that we had another arrangement. The first arrangement was, again, it's a different form of instrument of accession, where the Indian Independence Act required all the princely states to immediately inform whether they would like to create a dominion of India, or they would like to go to the dominion of Pakistan or remain independent. So around 10 chiefs signed that. In the process, prior to 15 August, which was an arrangement only in defense, communication, currency, and some other auxiliary things, and which also clearly mentioned that nothing in this commitment, in this agreement, shall bind me to any future constitution, because they didn't have a constitution then, so they were framing the constitution. But it was just an indication, an agreement that yes, I will explore possibilities of acceding in principle to the dominion of India. Then came another draft in the arrangement with the governor, which was sent to Delhi, which had the conditions that this agreement would remain for a period of 2 years under these terms. So when I look at that agreement, the second agreement, which was done arrangement with the governor of Assam, Governor Akbar Hydari, the document when it came back from Delhi, exactly the same, except the words for a period of 2 years was removed, deleted from that document. So when I think of it, there was no sellout as such, because that standstill arrangement is still there. That there was a paragraph, in the first paragraph, it was mentioned that of the annex agreement that this arrangement remains until new or modified arrangements have been arrived at between the respective parties, that is Dominion of India, Province of Assam on one side, the Khasi States on the other side, on the other hand. So these stakeholders were yet to conclude, because they were framing the constitution. Without having concluded this, they straightaway came and brought the sixth schedule. That way one can see that the government of India also was like, to appease Assam or to fulfill the aspirations of the Khasis. So they thought, okay, and Assam projected Reverend Nicholas Roy as, the face of the Khasis, and tried to convince the Constituent Assembly that this was a better, arrangement in their perspective. So when you look at national, or when you look at Assam's point of view, the sixth schedule was a very convenient thing. That's how in the late memoirs of Reverend Nicholas Roy, I find that he subsequently was very upset. But he said it was too late in the day. What could I do? As a hillman alone in the Constituent Assembly, he said, I was taken aback at the changed attitude of the Premier of Assam due to the pressure from his Assamese colleagues. So these were the problems that the Khasi states face. So I said, so Gilbert was absolutely right in the sense that this is a very, very good arrangement that was arrived at, irrespective of the fact that they had removed the word for a period of 2 years. Our basic structure and our basic rights have been mentioned in this treaty. And I read it in all the capacity at my command to read through the fine print, the lines, dot by dot. And I found it was a very, very powerful agreement, for which one can understand why even the government of India was so hesitant in incorporating it in the Constitution of India. because it would create a different kind of arrangement within the Constitution of India. It would be another constitution within the Constitution. So, this. So I took it to the people and discussed it with the CM Khairim, and I went extensively all over his kingdom. And here I find that the people were very much in agreement that these rights belong to them. The treaty that the CM signed was not to protect his rights, not to protect his, individual. It was to protect the rights of the people, which today in the present context in 2020, we're still facing all these challenges. So I don't know, I've tried to cut short and tell you that, these are what I've tried to do is go to the people. Because what do you do? Why do you have a treaty? It's just to protect a people, and the Khasi people wanted these special rights. You didn't have this special system in the whole of the country. You didn't have this institution in entire India. Just the fact that we are a matrilineal society, which does not exist anywhere in the country, is itself something strange. Nowhere in the country, except in the tribal areas, we own the land, right? So whenever Parliament legislate land, it is in context where they look at it as a focus that we own the land. So laws and all, we get into conflict because of that again. Because the majority make law for the majority, which is right. They make all kinds of laws, which is suitable to their way of living, their custom, their tradition. But when you come here, government has no land. Government in an affidavit, state government of Meghalaya in an affidavit in 98, 97 due to the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, said, I don't own any forests. The government forest is limited to 4% of the forests in the state. The rest belongs to the community, individuals, clans, sacred forests. 4%, that's the reply of the government of Meghalaya. And yet we are still stuck. So, coming back to the latest tension that we have, which is very unfortunate. People are asking me, what is this? So I said, it's a systemic collapse of responsibility by the district council, the state, and the center, because they all know this problem. The issue is they don't have the political will to resolve this problem. This is where we are stuck today.
Just to get back, John, to this, since we're having a little bit of a short discussion today, just to get back to this, some of these ideas that you have spoken about, which I think would require a little bit more thinking. Like in your experience, what is your understanding of this institution called SAME? So you were saying that you had an engagement with them, and this is kind of an insight and a clarity that you got about this institution. If one was to ask you now, after all this kind of work that you have done, what is your understanding and your conceptualization of this institution of SAME-ship or the SAME?
You see, when we say the SAME, in Khasi, when we address him, we say Pa-Aim. Pa would mean father, fatherly, view. And then we would say Aim. Aim is like mother, so Pa and Aim, father. So when someone takes on the role of the CM, he is a fatherly figure. Unlike in a constitutional mechanism where you have he's a prime minister of India. So, he will do things based on majority. Everything is based on majority. Whereas in the political system of the CM, it is more on a fatherly, on a consensus, on a, dialogue nature of governance. So, and he would represent, he's expected to be a neutral person. So you'll never find a CM standing on a political platform. It's never happened, right? You will find a CM having contested elections, but after resigning as a CM, again, when you say to define the CM, then so it's a very strange situation that the district council legislated one law, 1959 Act, under para 3. They had this description. The only description that connects the Khasi chiefs with the Constitution of India and the 6th schedule is para 3 of the 6th schedule, subclause which says the appointment or succession of chiefs and headmen. It is para 3G. In para 3G of the 6th schedule, the appointment or succession, because we had, some Sadaships, some thing which were by direct election, and most of the Simships and other places were by succession. So that is the only linkage, constitutional linkage between the thing. There's been objections by most of the chiefs also to say, why have you defined me as a chief? We are not chiefs. Define me by my proper name. Define me by my name, Siem, the office that I hold, the Siem, the Doloi, the Nokma, and so on and so forth. So, so he represents, he's elected, he's confirmed, you can also, when you go further into the same shape, you will find the traditional process of succession existing in Hima Khairim, in Khairim state, is what is actually supposed to be. There it is purely by succession. So then the Siem's elder sister's son would be the next future Siem. So there's no question of, dispute and all that. Unless when he's brought before what the British call the Mantris, the Bahrao, the clan elders, then they confirm. Then he's further brought before the Ukhono Hajar, the citizens. And if there's nothing, adverse, he's, he becomes the same and continues for life. And recently I was just trying to, there was some people were saying, why do you have this issue for life? I was looking at the recent debates in the US on the confirmation of Justice Barrett. It would look very odd that I'm trying to draw that reference. The justices in the Supreme Court in the United States are for life. So I was thinking out why, of all things, in our most advanced country, the most powerful country, would they have somebody for life? Then during the debate, one of the senators in that Judiciary Confirmation Committee stated out that, you are also there, because she was being interviewed, thoroughly interviewed, going through her background, academic. Oh, it was amazing. You'd really enjoy if you were to watch that debate. Then this matter of for life, the tenure for life came up. And one of the senators was saying that you are there because it is assumed for life. You will not be pursued, pressurized by any other office. Which, there have been a lot of debates in India today of our honorable justices, having found reappointment in various status in various offices. Like you have retired judges heading Human Rights Commission, you have retired judges heading Lokayukta commissions, and so on and so forth. So the lure of, sometimes this attraction for further office would, whether it would, compromise your process of judgment, is a big debate and question which is going around. So in the US, they have this for life. And I was thinking, wow, the Khasis have the same San Mantris for life. Although I have today been saying, okay, because the work, the pressure, all of you, can you appoint a deputy? Because when you reach a certain age, then, you still have to function, right? You have to still have to administer. So the CM is surrounded by a council of clan elders known as Bakhrao, Batri. There are lingdos. They have a structure under them. And mind you, in accordance with the custom, the Dorbar Hima is the supreme authority. So it can recall the CM if there was any wrongdoing by the CM. Similarly, the process of recall, non-existent in any part of the world. In India, they're debating, okay, what kind of electoral reforms shall we do it? They do have in some states in the United States, where if an X percentage of voters sign a petition, if it crosses a certain percentage, they have to be in a re-election. I recall there are some states, I don't know which one, but here in the Khasi states, the CM, the Rangbashinong, even the clan elders, I keep reminding them that, by the way, you're not for life. I mean, you are for life, subject to the confidence you enjoy of the clan or the people. I've seen in my own village where I grew up in Laimkhura, a Rangbashnong being recalled at short notice. I would like to name him, but unfortunately, something happened. It was an issue relating to the KSU, which was then against the the introduction of photo identity card came in, and the KSU was demanding that the foreigners date the Assam Accord, which should have been sorted out first, and then you go into this photo ID process. So there was unfortunately one of our Rambashnongs in Laimkhura who complied with the district administration, convened that meeting, allowed them to come into the village to have these photographs being taken. And there was immediately, I think after a week or two, there was a major Darbashnong and he got removed. He had to resign. So that is the structure of this IMSHIM. They have tried to codify in some of the acts of the DC Council, but we are not too happy with whatever they have done. It is a very, very, rudimentary kind of what they've done. What the legislative wing of the DC Council have done, if you read all the acts and rules, they have empowered themselves through those acts. Further empowerment of the executive committee. So anything and everything, subject to approval of executive committee. Nowhere is it saying, okay, subject to approval of the citizens, of the people, which is the actual tradition. So I have to tell you that the tradition CM is, I think we can debate, we can have a lengthy elaboration of who or what is the CM. In short, I used to conclude by saying, if I try to explain to my friends throughout the, to people outside who are not from who are not Khasis, a CM has different roles. He functions as the head of his country. Try to give it a simple explanation. He's like the prime minister of his country. Then being prime minister, he presides over a cabinet of his elders, clan elders. Then he's also the chief justice of his Supreme Court. But today, the coming of the 6th schedule, the administration of Justice Rule 1953 has overtaken his role, right? So you can now further go and appeal against him to another court, which is politicized, which could be influenced by decisions of the DC Council. So he's the Chief Justice of his Supreme Court. He's also, especially in CM of Khairim, he's also the head of his, he's also the Speaker of his parliament, because he has to preside over the Darbar Hima, the highest apex policy-making body of the Khasis in our traditional system is the Darbar Hima, which is participated by all the citizens. So he's the Speaker of that parliament. Lastly, he is also the High Priest of his faith in that kingdom. So these are the few roles, in association with his sister, elder sister, who's normally known as the Mayim. He's the High Priest of the religious rituals and ceremonies that take place. So during the Shat Pomblang, and other things that he has to do. So to describe, as I have described just now, okay, as a prime minister of his country, what are his roles? So that will take another.
Yes,
okay, Speaker, what is this? So then again, another definition, So it's quite an interesting, amazing tradition, which actually, if had we had a very supportive government in the center, or people of understanding at can you imagine till today, the Khasi states, when we went and made our petition to the Ministry, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, they were shocked to know that the Khasi states, because of the non-conclusion of the instrument of accession, it is still a matter under the Ministry of Home Affairs. while the rest of the tribes are still have now been directly been administered by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. You have to understand this point. The
Yes.
Khasi states till today, because I have to really thank Dr. Rameshwar Oraon, I think that was his name. He was the then chairman of the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, and he was one of the first officials of the government of India who literally told me, okay, give me this document. Let me read. He said, sit down. So I sat across his official chamber and he read it line by line. And what was his remark on completing the reading of this 2-page, 3-page instrumental session as an ex-agreement? He told me, brother, how did your chiefs, your kings manage to extract such a document? So I said, sir, well, that was, their ingenuity at that time that they managed, because these were our rights. It's nothing, that they fought for their own rights. It was for the people's rights. So he narrated how, because he was an Adivasi. So he said, in our place, we have been raped. He used that word. We were raped. We were literally, we have lost everything, he said. We lost everything. And so he said, so he conducted a hearing. And that's another story altogether. But he said, okay, so what you want? I said, we are in conflict. This document should find place in the Constitution of India, which will then recognize and have a clarity on the system that we have in our state.
Okay.
Without which, it's very difficult to keep explaining what is the same,
Yes. Well, John, I think we can probably stop here today because we have gone a little bit, and we can continue this discussion of our book that we are coming out with, and probably many of these videos will be part and parcel of that book. So we will put a link in the book, in the ebook, so that people can also access these kind of discussions as they read the book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so we can welcome whoever wants to, have it'll be an interesting debate if anybody else wants to get into a debate on this.
Correct.